I got started by working with Peter Kay. So when he did Phoenix Nights, I did the odd joke that didn't get credited for, just kind of throwing things in. And then when he did Max and Paddy, I then became the script editor for Max and Paddy and really enjoyed that role. And then we went on to do a couple of other things together, including Pop Factor for Channel 4. And that was like me getting a proper writing credit. So that was kind of the start, really, kind of chipping my way in, doing extra bits and trying to prove my worth, really. Yeah, so it's really interesting with Car Shape because it started with the situation, really, because I was looking at what was being commissioned at the time, because you're always desperate trying to look at what are the trends and what are people going to want to buy and put on channels. And there was a programme on BBC Two with Alfred Molina and Dawn French. Roger and Val just got in, and it was two people in a kitchen. So I thought, oh, that must be what they're going to commission. Really low cost, one set, two people, really easy to do. So I thought, well, how can I come up with situations where there's two people in one situation? So that's where it came from, really, of trying to work out a way to get something commissioned. And then the idea came to go, what about if they were in a car and forced to be in that situation? It didn't feel like that had been done before. And obviously there's been people in cars, in sitcoms, but having the whole sitcom in a car felt like it hadn't been done before. So that's where it started, of trying to answer what I thought was the challenge from channels. It turned out at the end that it wasn't very cost effective to do it in a car, but it started that way. Yeah, I think there's a number of things, I think, why it works. I think a lot of people watch it and recognise themselves in that, because lots of people do that commute to and from work and do that in a car. And also, because of that space as a car, as you buy a car, when somebody comes in there, and you know, when you loan your car out to a friend for whatever reason, or even your partner, and they move the seat, it's like, this is your domain. So it's quite interesting. This is quite a protected world. So when somebody steps into that protected world and changes the radio station or turns the volume up on that radio station, we knew there was lots of possibilities for two characters rubbing against each other, to kind of antagonise each other within that journey. So lots of opportunities to go different directions with those relationships. So when you're in the writer's room, there's some things that you laugh about, and then you look at it the day after and go, we can't use that. It's either inappropriate, or you just go, we were just laughing within that moment. But you kind of know things are funny when you keep coming back to that line again and again and going, we're not even touching that, we're not changing that. It feels like that works in that situation. However, you also, when you're on set and you're then seeing it actually performed, you kind of go, it doesn't quite work in that situation. Now we've got all the other bits within that, and sometimes you're changing stuff as you go. So it's just, when you make it real, you can kind of then know it's funny. So within the second series was slightly different from the first. So Peter, Sian and I were together for all of that. In the first series, Tim and I had written the scripts, and then I worked on them with Peter and Sian to kind of get them ready for television. We put lots of different elements in. So it was slightly different for two. We were together for all of that period, rather than handing over, here's our first go and then let's do a second go at it. You just know when you've got something. So it's kind of, I talked about in series 2, not that we were running out of things to do with them in the car, but we wanted to make sure it felt different for the audience to go, this isn't just, I could just jump into this and this feels like it was the episode last week. It needs to feel different in terms of action that was going on. And so I suggested that they went on a day trip out to a safari park, which Sian and Peter went, that's ridiculous. We can't do that, it's just moving it on too far. And then we went back to it because we went, actually there's something in that of going, how do they get to that as a couple? So then it's Sian's character Kaylee saying, let's just sack it off, let's have a day off. And it suddenly then became acceptable for them to go to a safari park. No, in some ways it's quite a gift, really, because you're not then worrying about because you're restrained. You kind of feel like there's only so many places you can go, so it's quite freeing, if that makes sense, because you're not trying to think, oh, what's this next plot line for Only Fools and Horses? Where could they go? You've got a wider canvas to do something with a show like that, whereas we were quite restricted, so everything had to involve a car. So you can get to that quicker in some ways because you've restricted yourself to that vehicle. No pun intended. Yeah, well, it's interesting because when we first wrote it, I based the Kaylee character on Sian because I've worked with Sian before and known Sian for quite a few years, but didn't imagine Sian playing that. So they're in effect they're playing versions of themselves, and so we allow that to them to be quite real, and that rub becomes very natural within that. So lots of the improvised, and we've got an unscripted episode coming out at the start of May this year, and you'll see within that just they naturally fall into those flows. So that's a gift for us as a writer because we kind of know, I understand who you are as characters and where we can then push you, where the limits are of those roles and what's acceptable for each of them. It was very clear for us from the get-go, really. Yeah, and Sian's brilliant at that because Sian will say, and I know she'll probably do this on everything that she works on. She'll kind of go as a female in this, particularly if it's been written by a man. She's going, I just wouldn't say that. I wouldn't react in that way. That makes me look pathetic, or I'd just be more annoyed at that. So she's kind of honing not only in terms of what the actual words are, but the tone of those words and how those are delivered. It's kind of really understanding that from a female perspective as well. A bit of both, really. We kind of knew where we wanted to go to with the relationship of John and Kaylee, but we were kind of. Yeah, we were a little bit guided by how they reacted to things, but we kind of knew the overall arc would be that that relationship would get to that point. Radio was always a part of the script. So my background, I've worked at various radio stations across the UK, and so it was always a part of the script. But as we got more into developing it, we kind of made what we started to talk about radio being like the third character within that. So it became much bigger than we'd originally anticipated it to be, and we created all those radio shows so they all existed for breakfast and driver's complete show, and in a lot of the instances we created those and then Peter and Sian were reacting to those for the first time when they were hearing them on the radio. So it's kind of we used a lot of that for the improvisation. Unless we needed it as kind of a plot line, then they knew that was coming and different things. But a lot of that was to go, right, we're going back to base, let's play the radio that we've recorded for Drive, and they can react to that naturally, and we use those to kind of drop into the show. So when they're hearing those dreadful adverts or a dreadful promotion or certain tracks that come on, if it wasn't a plot line, then we'd get their natural reaction to that.